Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Great. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Well, thanks for being so willing to talk and tell everyone about your journey egg freezing. I have to say,
Absolutely.
your YouTube video was pretty entertaining.
I'm glad I could make it entertaining.
Well, considering you have kind of a really unique career path, I'm sure it was easy for you to do.
I appreciate that. Yeah, when I was going through all the footage, I had a lot of footage, and I thought there are definitely two ways this video could go. Let's make it fun.
Yeah. Yep. Well, it looked fun. So I wanted to be there right there with you, like doing the little, egg freezing dance.
By the way, those were actually videos that I sent to my girlfriends, and I have a group text message thread that we all just stay on top of almost every day. We're texting each other ridiculous things. And so I was giving them these updates via the group text messaging thread. And then I thought, you know what? I'll add those into the video.
Yeah. So great. Well, why don't we start with some basics? Right. So yeah, just start everybody off a little bit, telling them about who you are and what you do, where you live, how you got on this journey to start with.
Great. I'm Taryn Southern. I live in Los Angeles. I've been here for 11 years. I'm originally from Wichita, Kansas.
No way. Did you know I live in Kansas? Or I used
Wait,
to?
where?
Hayes. Near Hayes.
No way.
Yeah, well, actually, I live in Chicago, and have for the last 15 years. But my parents still live in DeMar, Kansas, if you have any clue where that's at.
I've never even heard of it.
Yeah, you wouldn't. It's like you blink and you miss it. It's off of I-70.
You grew up fairly close then. Hayes isn't that far from Wichita.
Yeah. No, it isn't. I went to Wichita often, actually. I have a lot of friends there.
All right. Midwest girl.
Yeah, totally.
So yeah, I grew up there, and then I moved to LA right after college. I went to school in Miami, and then I've been here for, like I said, 11 years, pursuing a variety of different career paths. I started in entertainment, working as a TV host and an actress, and then started creating my own content, writing and producing. And about the time I moved here was when YouTube launched, and so I had this growing fascination for the digital space, and now I predominantly work in that space. I make content for companies and brands. I consult people on how to build digital audiences, and I'm now making a lot of VR content.
It's amazing.
Yeah, so totally new field. It's been really, really fun. My career's taken on a lot of different forms, but it's been great.
Yeah, it sounds like you reinvent yourself quite a bit.
You sort of have to out here, but I mean, yeah, I think I've been lucky to be able to just pursue whatever I'm most curious about and whatever I'm passionate about. But I think I've undergone a few big career transitions.
Yeah. Well, it also sounds like you take chances too. Like you seem like you're a risk taker, and I just kind of gather that from speaking to you, but it's great.
You are very insightful, and that actually plays quite a lot into the egg freezing. So
it does. So tell me,
we can connect those dots.
Tell me how you first learned about egg freezing and what you thought about it when you learned about it.
So I first learned about egg freezing when I was 23. I was diagnosed with cervical cancer, and in the process of looking at options, should I need to remove my cervix, or there were various options that the doctors discussed with me at the time, and egg freezing came up as just something I might want to contemplate doing should we have to do something more invasive.
What year was this?
This would have been 8 years ago, 8 years ago, say 2009, 2010.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that was an interesting process where I really sat with what would happen in worst case scenario land. And at that point, at 23 years old, the last thing on my mind was children. So having these conversations with doctors felt a bit surreal, and probably much easier than if I had been older. Because I remember thinking at the time, you know what, like ultimately, if I can't have kids, I'm totally cool. Just take this sucker out. if it's going to mean that I don't have to go through chemo or through other treatments that I just was I was pretty adamant about not doing, then I was all for it. So that was my first look into egg freezing. And then around 28, 29, I went through a breakup that was really, really tough. And it was a guy who I thought I was going to marry. I was absolutely positive we were going to get married and we would have babies. And it was the life path I was perfectly fulfilling my timeline in my head. And then when that breakup happened, it was another, I think, sharp realization that you have so little control over things in your life. You can do your very best, but sometimes things just happen. And that's when I started looking into egg freezing again, especially after having had the warnings from my doctors in my early 20s as a result of the treatments I had. I thought, let me just go get my FSH and AMH tested, see where I sit, give myself a baseline. And then from there, I can make some decisions. And so that was 2.5, 3 years ago.
Okay.
And it took me a full 2.5, 3 years to actually go through with it. Yeah. I did my first test at 29. I think 28, 29. I was lower than quite a bit lower in terms of the levels than I should have been at my age. And I just kept thinking, I did some other tests along with the FSH and AMH with my microbiome. And I basically just went through this entire health craze for about a year where I did all of my hormone levels. I just tested everything. And I found that my adrenal glands were all out of whack, which is not surprising after going through a big breakup. They say that divorce and breakups can lead to, to some of the most shocking effects on the body. And so seeing that, I thought, before I freeze my eggs, let me get my body in working order.
That's
like,
smart.
Let's do this when I feel good, not when I feel bad and anxious. So it took two years, but I was able to fix a lot of the things that were sirens going off in my body. And then after that, I decided to go through with the egg freezing.
So just on the cost perspective, did you have regular health insurance? Were you like on Obamacare? Like, how did that work? I mean, it sounds like you went through a lot of different tests, a lot of different doctors. So did you pay for all of that out of pocket? Sadly,
preventative health care is not covered by most insurance companies. It's so ridiculous. It really makes me so angry. Our system loves to help people that are sick, but preventing sickness is, we wait until the last minute, right?
Yep.
So I paid for it out of pocket, and these were not cheap tests. I mean, I think one of the blood tests was like $700, but I tested for everything and had hormones and then I think there was another microbiome test I did that was maybe $200 or $300 that tests for all the gut bacteria. Do you have E. coli? Because all these things are interconnected, and it was so valuable. And then I had to pay for those tests again a year and a half later to actually see if everything I had been doing, the supplements I was taking, the changes to my diet, all of that, did it work? And the great thing was it did. That was the most exhilarating moment of my life, seeing science in my own body actually working. And even the doctors, I mean, I have some interesting stories related to the egg freezing. My AMH and FSH levels are much higher now than they were 3 years ago.
Wow.
Which makes no sense.
Zero.
Most fertility doctors, and I did four FSH tests and 3 AMH.
Wow.
And so I have enough data points to see that that's fairly
over
consistent.
time. You can see it like on a Richter scale. You can kind of see like, here I was at this age, here I was at this age, here I was at this age. Wow.
Yep. And if you look that stuff up, most fertility doctors say it's just a declining number over time, but it is invariably related to health, because I saw the other numbers in my body improve in terms of my hormone levels. And then, like I said, a big difference in my cortisol levels and EH. So I think I tell some of my friends when they call me freaking out about their AMH or FSH levels that it is possible.
Yeah, you're a case example. So what did you do that changed in your lifestyle and your health habits that affected these numbers?
A few things. I don't know that, I did so many things that I couldn't tell you what would be the largest contributor. In terms of supplements, there was only 2 supplements that I took the entire 2 years. Based on what my nutritionist recommended. One was a supplement called ashwagandha, which is typically given for adrenal health and stress relief. Ironically, when I've researched this drug further, it's been used for thousands of years in India for fertility. So I have no idea if I invariably affected my levels by taking this supplement. But it's supposed to help with cortisol. And then the other one is vitamin D. Cool. So those are the only 2 things I was taking consistently. In terms of diet, the big change was no sugar.
Yeah.
I dropped
Sugar's
sugar
a killer.
completely out. Yep.
Wow.
I mean, except
Even
for
your
the
coffee?
random. So I yeah, even the coffee, because I moved to this vanilla unsweetened almond milk, and that's what I
Nice.
put in my coffee, and that was
Uh-huh.
it. Now, I'll have a dessert every once in a while, or I'm
Yeah.
sure there is just sugar in some things, but I mean, that was a huge, huge shift. So now when I taste food, I taste desserts, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so sweet. I don't even like it anymore.
Yeah.
Fruit even tastes so sweet to me sometimes.
Yeah.
But that was a big, big change, was
Right.
the no sugar. And then I got off of years of taking anti-anxiety medication for the first time in 7 years.
Wow.
And it wasn't that I was taking it on the daily, but probably taking it enough to where it was invariably shifting my own neurofeedback response to stress.
Mm-hmm.
So I would take it quite frequently to go to sleep.
It's very brave of you to go off medication like that, especially when it's probably been prescribed to you.
Yeah, and it had been for so many years, and I had become completely dependent on it to sleep, primarily, and then occasionally for when I would actually have panic attacks. But even when taking it, it was like I had this sort of baseline anxiety. So, yeah, it took me about 2 months to get off of it, because they recommend that you
slow your dose down
slowly, to get your body and your
wean
neurochemistry
yourself off.
Exactly, and actually doing it that way, I'm glad I didn't try to go cold turkey. Doing it that way was not that difficult, and that was life changing. I mean, now I sleep better than I've ever slept.
Wow, great,
which is crazy. So those were the 3 big changes, which I think are pretty significant.
So you decided to take the leap of faith and do the whole egg freezing. How did you start with like choosing your clinic? Because you're in LA, and I know that you ended up going to New York for egg freezing. So how did you go through that whole process?
Yeah, so I had found a couple of clinics here in LA that I had done my early testing at, and ultrasounds. That was another interesting thing. My follicle count increased.
No way! Wow, you need like a case study done on you.
I know. I did two ultrasounds 2.5 years ago that both showed that I had 7 to 8 follicles, and then this year I did 2 with different clinics that showed 12 to 14.
Wow. So, incredible.
Wacky.
Yeah. Well, it just goes to show that preparing for an egg freezing cycle is so fundamental for a good outcome.
Yes. You don't want to be stressed. You don't want to go into it feeling terrible. I'm so happy I'm glad I waited the 2 years, and I got myself up to a healthy state.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I had these clinics. I really liked them a lot. Mm-hmm. They were fancy schmancy Beverly Hills clinics. One I had decided to go with because I had 2 other girlfriends who had been there and had very successful egg freezings done. And then I had a girlfriend go to the other one that I had been thinking of, and she ended up they had over injected her with hormones.
She basically
overstimulated, and didn't end up getting any eggs from the first round, so she had to pay for a second round, which they did at a discount. But we're talking about clinics that are charging between $10,000 and $13,000 for the egg freezing, not including medications. So she spent like $25,000 on 2 rounds, and her second round she got 7 eggs, and so. So I started looking at alternatives, and that's when I found the clinic I went to in New York, mm-hmm. Extend. Mm-hmm. And the reason I went there over the clinics in LA anyway, I don't know mm-hmm. what the cost of other clinics are around the rest of the US, but mm-hmm. I mean, about half the cost of the actual retrieval and the testing and procedures. And then what I found was really fascinating and exciting for me about Extend was that they guarantee you a minimum of 12 eggs. And if it takes 4 rounds to get there, it's all good. You don't pay anything more than I think it's $4,990 is your flat fee for the retrieval. All you pay for is the extra medication, which by no means is cheap. But you're talking about if you had to do 4 rounds. I mean, you're looking at potentially $30,000 in savings. Like if something went wrong, or if your body's just not,
or if you had a monster follicle, or if you weren't responding for whatever reason.
Yeah, or if you're a little older and you just don't have as many follicles, or whatever the thing may be. I love that they basically subsidize the process and take the risk out of the game. Mm-hmm. It's like a built-in insurance policy, because it's saying if you come here, we'll make sure you're good. You're not going to walk out empty-handed. You're not going to end up having to spend this exorbitant amount of money and then still end up with a number of eggs that you're not happy with. That's not. So I just love that. I thought I have to support them, and it takes the risk out of it for me. Yeah. And so I do a lot of work in New York since I'm in media. And so I have a boyfriend, and I said, I'm going to go to New York and do this egg freezing thing. And it's going to be like a New York workcation.
Workcation.
So
I like that.
I did it I stayed with a girlfriend of mine. I slept on her couch for 2 weeks. She's awesome. And yeah, it was awesome. I had so much fun. I turned it into a New York workation.
You did.
Yeah. And so I'm actually happy I did it that way. I was able to just kind of, be there for my appointments and build everything else around that. And then I think it was also great that my boyfriend came out with me for the first few days and then went home, which was great because by the time the hormones were he was out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah. Were you feeling really affected by the hormones? Because I don't know about you, but I was like super bloaty and very fatigued and yeah.
So I was bloated the first 2 days. And then after that, fine. I mean, I think I went out on day 8 or 9 in a black mini skinny dress. And I just couldn't believe that I wasn't bloated because all my girlfriends had the bloating. I didn't have the bloating, but the extreme fatigue, incredible fatigue. I'd say the last 5-6 days, I was by 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I was done. Mm-hmm. It was just you can't expect me to go anywhere. But that was predominantly it. I'd say the last few days I was aggressive.
Yeah.
Some aggression kicked in.
Well, what a lot of people don't know is that the cost of egg freezing is really going down a lot. And I'm hoping that by telling your story and getting more women involved in this and even pursuing it and thinking about it, because when we drive the numbers up, the clinics are doing more and more of these programs. So like the program you were talking about, there's other programs on the East Coast and the West Coast that have similar insurance plans. Like hey, listen, amazing. We're going to do several rounds with you if needed, or we're going to make sure you get at least this many eggs based on your age. And so the cost of freezing is in that $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 range. So if you're looking at clinics, if just the general public is looking at clinics that are higher than that, challenge those clinics to doing egg freezing cheaper. It's always good to check in because they could be having changes in the lab, could be having changes with their doctors shifting to other practices. And so when someone was good 10 years ago doesn't mean that they're good for egg freezing now. So, yeah.
A lot of different processes, different technology,
very
different pricing.
Yeah, stuff is shifting in the fertility world right now. And it's for the better good and all in all. But
do you have, I'm curious because, I just did this a couple of months ago. And even when I was getting into I was deciding when exactly to go to New York and if I could even make this 2.5 week window happen. I was trying so hard to find resources online that broke down the different clinics, what they offer, the benefits, I couldn't find anything out there that was like a sort of comprehensive resource.
It's hard to cover every fertility clinic in the U.S., but there's some big ones out there that are doing some progressive stuff. And then there are also great new startups that are happening to help on the financial side of egg freezing and making it affordable. Yeah, the financing and making it affordable and knowing that this is what you're using the money for. So like if you get laid off or if something changes in your life, they're going to be flexible with those changes. So that's why like with experience.com, I was trying to put all that information in just one place so women can access it. And now we're even starting a podcast to talk more specifically about those choices and how you go about learning about your reproductive health and the steps it takes to be proactive about your health and family plan. So it's just kind of the mission that we're out to help solve because it is full of unknowns, like you were saying. It's full of like just confusion, data. You don't know what's right. It's kind of like fake news. Like everyone says they're great, but are they really great? Like you need someone on the inside to feel comfortable with that. So I'm glad to hear that you did like a lot of interviewing and you checked out different clinics and you didn't just go to the one that's in your backyard because it's in your backyard and you were with a clinic that made sense and you felt good about. That's the key. And
when I talk to my girlfriends, I always say every single situation is so different and every individual's health and health history, genetic profile. It's all so different. So I think doing your research, knowing sort of, I suppose, like getting a baseline for your health, but also asking yourself the question, are there things that I could be doing to improve my overall health so that I don't necessarily have to jump right into this?
Yeah.
If you're not ready.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and a lot of those things.
Just to kind of give you a sense, a lot of women that I talk to, so I've interviewed over 40 plus different women on all different locations and places and things in the world. And they have all had about 9 to 12 months before when they learned about it to when they actually took action. So you are not alone in that capacity. That's a very reasonable time frame to wrap your head around the whole egg freezing process. It's not like we're just jumping out and egg freezing. So it kind of makes me mad when the press and the media want to say, oh, well, women are just freezing their eggs because they want to work on their career or because they haven't met the guy that they want. And all of those things could be true, but we're doing it for ourselves, or at least why did you choose to do it? Because of your personal goals?
It was a mixture, but when I really by the way, I couldn't agree with you more. It's a big investment financially, emotionally, physically. And so by all means, I tell people to take their time as well with that decision. For me, now that I'm out of it and I've been able to parse all of my emotions, and even telling my story, it's helped me kind of parse out the different competing feelings and thoughts that were erupting prior to this. To be perfectly honest, I don't know that I'll ever need to use the eggs. I may be able to get pregnant perfectly fine in years from now. I mean, the reality, I have friends that are getting pregnant at 41, 42, 43 without help. And that's certainly not necessarily the norm, but it happens.
There's always exception to the rules.
Yep. And so for me, this was about de-risking my portfolio, so to speak. And so you were asking me early on about my career choices and saying you seem like a risk taker. And that's true. I mean, I've always kind of done things against the norm, and that's just how I love living my life. And I found that the idea of losing choice in the matter was taking up so much headspace for me. Other women, it might not, which is fantastic. But for whatever reason, for me, it was just taking up a lot of headspace. And I felt that it was affecting my ability to make the choices that I made throughout my 20s in my career and in my life choices. I just wanted breathing room. I wanted breathing room in my career. I wanted breathing room with my relationship. I felt like I needed that space. And so ultimately, for me, it was completely a decision for my, I guess, I don't want to say mental health or mental sanity, because I was fine before, but it just
takes the pressure off.
It totally took the pressure off, 100%. I'm currently dating a man who has children, and so there's a lot of questions that arise around having kids again, and so it felt like even just with my relationship, this provided a lot of breathing room. So there's no pressure on either side to have these conversations earlier than necessary. And same with my career. And just even my personal health, knowing that it can be fragile, knowing that I've had the experience of the cancer before, and you never know, things can come back, things can change. But just, I think for me, as soon as I was done with it, I felt this enormous weight lifted off of my shoulders. And the reality is, even if the egg, let's say I do have to use the eggs and they don't fertilize or they don't work, I think I will have bought myself many years of just feeling like I did the best I could in this situation at this time.
Right.
And I made a choice that was right for me.
Yeah. And I think we need to think about, too, that it may not just be for baby number one. Maybe this is for baby number two, if we get that far along. And then if you do have male factors, like we often don't think about the partner that we end up having kids with, if there's male factors on his side, then that's when the eggs could be really useful, because natural conception may not happen on the male side, not just the female side. Because of
exactly.
age. So
exactly.
Yeah.
And I have already accepted the fact that if I don't use them, I would be happy to donate them.
Wow. That's a
other
huge
couples.
Statement. Wow.
Happily.
Do you have
when I was in college,
family?
I thought about doing the egg freezing for other couples when I was younger. So it was ironic. I had considered that. So now that I have them on ice, I feel like, of course, they donate them.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. That's an incredible statement. Do you have siblings or family?
I have a younger sister.
A younger sister, okay.
And you?
I'm the oldest of 4 children. So I have a sister that's 18 months younger, and then I have 2 brothers. But one of my brothers is married, and it's funny because my mom gives me all this pressure. Not really, not intentionally. She just really wants to be a grandmother. And being the oldest, she's like, I thought you'd be married by now. And I go, yeah, me too.
We're also from Kansas.
Yes. Right.
So it is a little, it's a little bit different depending on where you grew up.
Right.
The expectations that you place on yourself and
lifestyle is different there. And
totally.
But yeah, I mean, they know better because we're originally from the East Coast and we moved to Kansas like when I was 9 or something. But
so they don't get the excuse.
No, they don't get that excuse. But for the last 30 years, that's been their lifestyle. So I think they forget what it's like to live somewhere else. But have you had conversations with your sister? I mean, you're very public, and I'm sure a lot has happened since going public with your egg freezing story. So tell us a little bit about what kind of feedback you're getting online, and is that affecting your own family? Or have you had conversations with like your sister, for example?
My family's been super supportive. They've been so great about the whole thing. I mean, I'm sure my mom, who knows what they really think deep down, but they've been super supportive. They love that I kind of made this choice for myself. My sister is actually getting married in 2 months. So she'll be tying the knot. So we got one sister on lockdown, and I'm sure that she'll probably start the building a family process sooner than later. She is absolutely positive she wants to adopt, which is like good for her. She's just always felt this way, and she's still, that's what she wants to do. So her first and second child will likely be adopted. And then I think she's looking at a third as being, if it happens biologically, then it happens. But, so I think my parents have have 2 sort of unconventional children, but yeah, I'm really happy for her. In terms of feedback, I mean, from my immediate friend group, it's been all positive. Mm-hmm. Granted, I live in LA, and I would say that 80% of my friends, I just turned 32 last week.
Okay. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Like 80% of my friends, 90% of my friends are not married.
Yeah.
That are between the ages of 30 and 36.
Yeah.
They're just now starting, and these are women. So obviously this is a big shift, very different from my friends who I grew up with. That, it's culturally just so different, I think. The expectation and, I joke about lifestyles are so different. I mean, I joke about in LA, if you're a dude in LA, most of them are not interested in marriage until they hit 38. And then they're like, we should start thinking about this. And so that's just kind of how it is. And in New York, I think it's even more so, like 40, 41. They're like, maybe we should get married. And then they start thinking about kids. And so there's just a lot more space. So my friends out here have all been really supportive. A lot of them have already done egg freezing. Yep. I'd say like maybe 30% have already done it.
Sounds like you had like even just 3 right off the bat that you were.
I have 4 or 5 good friends who've done it. Yeah. And then I've just had a lot of friends come to me asking questions. And so normally I tell them first, just go get your test done and get a baseline for where you're at. But it's been pretty positive. And then the most interesting feedback I received was from the attention piece I did, because that they posted a video on their Facebook that has, I think, over 3 million views now, and they posted it on a holiday. It's their first video ever about fertility. Yeah, and so I thought, this isn't going to do very well, and it ended up. I think it's ended up doing quite well given that, and which is sort of a testament to that it's an interesting topic that millennials want to know more about, because attention's audience is really millennial age group. And so reading comments on there was really, really fascinating. Granted, it was a very short video for Facebook. I think it was 1.5 minutes long. So it's missing all kinds of context and facts and whatever, but I think they did a really great job with the time that they had in breaking it down. And I think the reaction was overwhelmingly positive, and then there was still a decent number of people who were against it for whatever reason, whether primarily socioeconomic. A lot of people saying this only benefits the wealthy and the privileged, to which I have very much the same reaction as you do, in saying the more people do this, the cheaper it will invariably become. Just like any technology. I mean, to sequence the human genome 15 years ago cost millions of dollars. You can now do it for under $1,000.
Yeah,
I mean,
fraction
so
of the cost.
Insane, right? And so I get it, but it's not, to me, that's not a reason for not supporting the industry and moving forward. And the science and the technology just get better as it goes along. So that was a big chunk of the feedback. Yeah.
Well, we're just really thankful that you're such a voice, and thanks for being so open about your story. I mean, when I started doing stories like this, I got turned down tons of times because people didn't want to say their real name, or didn't want to say, who they were, where they lived, and those kind of things. And so I think that stigma is definitely shifting, going away, maybe not completely, but it's people like you that come out who are very well known in the space, whether it be online or a celebrity. And we can put you in that celebrity category, essentially. And and
thank you. That's generous.
Being that voice is so important, because it's about knowing the facts. It's about being educated and making the best right decision for you next.
And by the way, on the topic of stigma, it's so funny. Granted, I make YouTube videos. I've made so many at this point that are so out there in many ways that I think I've lost all sense of what is normal or not normal, or irreverent or not irreverent. But in terms of the egg freezing thing, like, I don't get the stigma, and I hope I do understand why some women are uncomfortable talking about it. And I've had a couple women tell me, well, it makes me feel embarrassed, as though I've failed in life. And I am like, oh my gosh, I feel so differently. I feel like it's so empowering, and it's a celebration of choice and of, in some, I mean, for me, I don't come from money. Like I've built
Humble
everything
roots.
myself.
Right.
And so to be able to do this for myself, to me, is a celebration of my spirit and the things that I want in life, and continuing on that path. And I have no problem telling people about it. And if anything, I tell women who are dating, who are at a point where they're starting to feel the anxiety of the clock, I'm like, I wouldn't necessarily talk about your egg freezing on a first date or a second date, but just knowing that you've done that for yourself, to me is more empowering than potentially feeling like you got to have the baby conversation with a dude early on, right?
Yeah, it takes away the fog, right? You don't have to be in this fertility fog of like, oh my God, I want a baby, and I think you're right. And I love that you, I don't know, was it your boyfriend that threw the egg freezing party?
Yes. I have an invitation that I thought I would upload to the internet that other people can just use and for their own egg freezing parties.
Yeah.
I think it should be a new thing, because look, I've been invited to enough baby showers
and enough weddings and wedding showers and engagement parties to
let's start a new trend.
Yes, new trend. Egg freezing parties.
My egg freezing party was debaucherous and and probably a lot more aggressive than a baby shower would be. Yeah. So I'm hoping that more women do this, because I think it's so fun. It was so random. We just thought, like, why not? And it was such a sweet idea for my boyfriend to do for me. But it was a blast. Like, everyone who came, we even invited guys, and my guy friends that came were sort of confused. Like, they were uncertain whether this party was really
a party.
A party or and they came and they're like, we love egg freezing parties.
They're like, there's so many eggs.
yeah
so
it was
cool.
Great.
Well, thank you for being a voice, and thanks for being so open about your journey and your story. And we will keep up with you online and tell everybody to subscribe to your YouTube channels and keep up with you. But thanks for offering just such great advice and telling your story.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.